Silver really has peaked twice at right around $50. The first time was in 1980. What's interesting about that is that was at the end of a decade-long bull market. And then the second time that it peaked was almost at $50. This would have been in April of 2011, 49 and change. And after that, like gold, it backed off pretty dramatically after the great financial crisis, 2008, 2009. So this was post-crisis, but then it backed off 2012, 2011, 2013. And it does certainly very much follow gold in terms of momentum and so on. But in the last, so then it really moved downwards to sideways until about 2016 or so. It had an explosive start to the year that fell back. And then really in 2018, 2019, you had this move out. So it was moving sideways, consolidating, I'd say in around the $15, $16 range. Because I follow the market so closely, it kind of makes me laugh a little bit sometimes when I see, people say, silver's going nowhere, it doesn't do anything. And then they get bored of it. And when they get bored of it is really when people should be paying the most attention, because it goes through periods of being boring and then become explosive. And in this kind of market, which I believe is a long-term bull market, the explosive tends to be on the positive side. And so again, if you look back at a chart of the last 5 years, it's almost like a clear step up. So it was in the $15, $16 range, and then late 2019 or so, started to move higher, exploded higher in 2020. And now we're at this new higher level where it's been moving in sort of the $20 to $30 range. And I believe that once it's done consolidating in this range, we're going to be at a considerably higher level. And I think these higher highs of the last few years, say $30 or so, are going to start to become a new floor in this. And so once we meaningfully break through $30, I believe $30 will start to be that new floor, and then we're going to see higher highs come from there. What's really happened industrially is the properties of silver have really made it become an indispensable metal in a number of ways. I'm going to just sort of name some major sectors, and then we can kind of drill down a little bit into a couple of them. But the main ones are things like medicine, electrical and electronics, and then you have things like batteries and solar power. And the elephant in amongst those is really solar. So I mean, when I talk about electrical and electronics, a couple of interesting things about silver. One is that if you understand its properties, then that really makes a lot of sense, because silver is the world's single best conductor of both heat and electricity, and it's also the most reflective of all metals. In fact, as conductor, it's considered the standard. So it's ranked at 100, and everything is ranked somewhere below that. So it really is the benchmark in terms of conductivity. So you find silver everywhere. I mean, people don't realize that it surrounds them. It's in their electronics, it's in their smartphones, flat screens, laptops, tablets. Because it's such a great conductor, you find it in switches. So on-off switches. It's reliable. It doesn't wear. It doesn't lose its responsiveness. When it comes to solar, which is really the big area and I follow solar quite closely, it's absolutely indispensable in solar. And so if you look at, there are multiple charts that show the amount of silver usage in solar in two ways. So you have the amount of silver going to the solar industry, that's consumed by the solar industry. And then you have the amount of silver that goes into each solar panel or solar cell. And so the amount of silver going to the industry has grown by leaps and bounds. The amount of silver going to each panel has actually been falling for the most part for the last 10 years or so. In other words, it's something we call thrifting. And the amount of silver going to solar panels is the loadings. So the loadings have come down because thrifting has increased. It makes sense. The manufacturers have looked for ways to cut costs without obviously losing efficiency or quality, and they continuously find ways. So the amount of silver per solar cell has come down, but the growth in solar panel
Outstrips that.
production and installations has just absolutely exploded in many places. It's now the cheapest form of new electrical energy. A couple of new technologies are really being adopted very quickly in the solar panel industry. The most common one, and I'm just going to use acronyms, it's called PERC, so PERC. That's the common one right now, the most common. And then you have the next two coming are called TOPCon, and from there, HJT. And HJT is actually representative. There are a couple of others, similar acronyms, SHJ. These are all really all fall under HJT. So here's what's interesting is that PERC takes about 80, I believe it's 80 milligrams per panel, per solar cell of silver. TOPCon requires 100 to 150 milligrams of silver per solar cell. HJT requires from 200 to 220 milligrams per solar cell. So the next two technologies that are more efficient take anywhere from 50 to 150% more silver per panel. So that's all fine. These are new technologies, but what people don't realize is that they're actually being adopted very quickly. The whole industry is evolving very quickly. The International Energy Agency forecasts that, so this is based on the on achieving the 2050 net zero targets. So International Energy Agency tells us that between 2021 and 2030, on our road to achieving those targets, the amount of power from solar panels should be up 7 times the 2021 levels. So if you do the math, that forecasts an annual growth in solar panel installation of 25% per year for like 9 years. So that's just explosive. And I mean, I've looked at the numbers multiple times. The expectation, and I mean, obviously it would make no sense for us to get there, but the path that we're on assumes that we're going to need really all of the solar of the silver supply exclusively for the solar panel in the industry within about 8 or 9 years. So that gives you some idea of the trajectory that we're on in terms of silver consumption. And that's just for solar. It doesn't take anything into account for other industries, for investment demand, and everything else that silver is used in. So it's really quite bullish. The first thing to know is that silver is a much smaller market than gold is, depending on how you measure it. I mean, I talk about that in the book. It's about a tenth in terms of value of silver demand every year. It's about a tenth the size of gold. And so, and gold is king. I mean, there's no question. I'm certainly not going to deny it. It's, you know, it's been the money of kings, the asset of kings for thousands of years.